All right, good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and start here. My name is Nick Massis, Director of Beloit Public Library. If you ever have any technical issues, we have a team of 24 that will come wherever you are and get your presentation up. So again, thanks for coming to the first of our series. Many of you were here at a number of them last year or even the year before, where we had our Know Your Local Government series. And it was really started to connect people to the information needed for them to participate, either as just residents wondering where their tax dollars go, or even to get a little bit deeper and get involved into some of the different city organizations and that. So what we're doing this year that's a little bit different is we're combining the Know Your Local Government series that we did the last 2 years with the city's effort last year, where they had a cohort go through and learn about each of the departments of the city and the different committees in an attempt to encourage, not only to enlighten, but also to encourage people to get involved into city activity and that. So we've merged those two programs together. That's why it also makes a lot of sense to have our city manager, Jerry Gabrielatos, here today to launch this series talking about the city and its strategic vision. So just before he comes up, we have our 24-25 lineup, and that's in front of you, this beautiful poster. You'll see some of the folks that are going to be presenting, and then the spring dates are going to be announced. Because we merged, we're also expanding the number of sessions that we're also going to have. And I want to thank, obviously, the Beloit Public Library. It's an honor to put this on. The City of Beloit for partnering on this. The Beloit Public Library Foundation, which sponsors some of the costs for this series, and then also State Line Community Foundation for the last 2 years. And this year we anticipate will be funding and sponsoring the lunches that you're enjoying today. So with that, Jerry Gabrielatos is going to walk us through his vision for the city and all other kinds of interesting things.
Okay.
Jerry Gabrielatos.
Hi everybody, can you hear me? I think you can. So thanks so much for coming. I know you're all just here for lunch, so I'll be brief so you can go back to enjoying your meal. No, I'm actually thrilled that you're here, and this gives me an opportunity to talk about a little bit about what we've done since I've been here, a little bit about where we're heading next, a little bit about why the screen is not working anymore. Maybe I... No. Truly, it's not working. All right, well, I'm going to keep talking, and I guess Amy and the team will patch this whole for us. So, one of the things that Laura and I have talked about, Laura, a PhD, but a proud graduate of the Beloit Civics, what did we call it?
Community Academy.
Yeah, she's got that PhD hanging in her office, but the piece of paper that she's probably most proud of would be finishing from our Community Academy this past year. But one of the things that we took away from the first time we did this was that we thought it would be fun for everybody to get a little bit of autobiography, there it is, as to why the people throughout this course are standing in front of you, what led them here, what makes them a good fit for the position, and what they'd like to do. So I grabbed the slides from when I interviewed here, like almost 2 years ago now, and I thought it would be fun just to sort of tell a little bit about myself with that perspective that I've gained from the 2 years that I've been here. Because there's certain things that I see I put in there that were really valuable, and I would argue have been an asset to us as we move the city forward. But for now, I'm just gonna wait a minute longer. There is a part of the presentation later in the end, not not in the end, but closer to the end, where I talk a little bit about what's on tap of where I see the city going. I envision that being a lot more Q&A. So I'll present some ideas that are sort of percolated in my mind, and I really want to hear back from you about whether you think I'm on the right track and get input from you. Yes, Brian.
I was disappointed that I missed it, and you had the little get-together on Adidas
Yeah.
several weeks ago. Is that going to be something that you're going to continue, and can you tell us what that was all about?
Sure. So the question was about the panel that we had a few weeks ago at Adidas. It was me, Dr. Garrison, and Dr. Boyden from Beloit College. The story with that is a kind of a fun one to tell. Mark Preschel, former council member, really active on social media, one of Beloit's champions, said, you know, we should do something at Adidas where I just ask you questions. And I was like, well, I'm not that interesting, but if you get the people who lead our other institutions involved, it would really be something that I think is unique. And so we set up at Adidas maybe 2 weeks ago. I was thrilled. There were probably about 30 people in the room. Some people I didn't know. Nick walked out early, and I won't view that as a slight, Nick. Okay.
No, you should.
Yeah, I know. I'll take it in stride. But I was just remarking to Dr. Garrison a minute ago. A fair amount of the questions that we got were about the college, and I think that's a really great thing. I mean, part of the reason we did that was to outreach and engage some constituencies that we usually don't visit. Being pretty candid here, we were intentional about doing it on the west side. We tried to have as many community events as possible throughout the city, and doing it at Adidas was a lot of fun. I usually go there with Mark after I do the satellite at City Hall at Walgreens. So it looks like we're up and running. So thank you so much for that. A little bit about me. I'm from Chicago. And that's me talking to Mirta Ramirez about a crime issue. I worked in a few different neighborhoods. I can't see it there, but it's probably Wicker Park, Logan Square, West Town, for those that are familiar with Chicago. And I served in a variety of roles, Director of Constituent Services, Chief of Staff, Senior Advisor. When I started here, I had lunch with Larry Arft not long after taking the job, and Larry said that Beloit is a little big city or big little city. And I understand that much better now with the idea that we're a diverse city. We've got a spectrum of a wide range of income levels in the city. We have problems that a big city has, and it really was a good prep for my career in government. Worked for 3 members of the Chicago City Council. None of them are there anymore, so I don't know what that means. Okay, there was a laugh there. But you know, to bring this sort of full circle, and this is kind of a funny little anecdote. Some of the gang members that live or participate in nefarious activity in Beloit are members of the Maniac Latin Disciples, and to bring this full circle, I worked in the neighborhoods where they started. So small world, I guess. But anyway, so we did some cool things there. In response to a gang shooting, we organized a neighborhood watch. We advocated for use of social media. This is in 2010, so it was a little bit novel then. And we took an aggressive approach to problem buildings, which actually has a lot of overlap with some of the work that we've done in Beloit so far. That's me and a bunch of friends from that time, and we banned single-use plastic bags. I know that probably wouldn't be the most popular thing to do here. I also don't think it's even allowed by the state, but it was something in which I spent years of my life doing. So as Beloit, we talk about recycling, or how get more people to recycle in Beloit. I know a fair amount about waste streams that I never thought possible. So this was the next community where I was assistant city manager for the time I was here. It was Alberley. It's at the corner of 35 and 90 in Minnesota. They had a meatpacking plant that burned down. It was really a city that was working through some changes, and blue-collar city. I think the income and education levels were on par with Beloit. So there's things I did in Elderly that I felt like have some overlap in Beloit, and still things I think about as I've been city manager for the last couple of years. While in Elderly too, I started a Main Street program. For those who don't know, we have a Main Street program here, and one of the things that I was thrilled about when I came here was my potential involvement in the Main Street program. Beloit is one of the few cities in the country to win the Great American Main Street Award. It's like the Oscar for Main Streets. They only give away 5 of them per year. You can't win it twice, but we've got that sort of trophy to put on our shelf. Regrettably, I don't spend as much time with the Main Street program as I would like. I get pulled in a lot of directions, but it is something that I always keep tabs on. Now that we're Beloiters, I'll say that my wife knows every vendor in the farmer's market that she loves to go to. She gets there at 8 a.m., makes a beeline through all of them, and gets home around 9 o'clock. It's one of the things that we love about living in Beloit, farmer's market and a vibrant Main Street. So community engagement's been something that I've done a ton during my time here, the aforementioned evening at Dita's, but I also went door to door in Albert Lea to figure out a little bit more about how the community worked or how it wasn't working. I went door to door in 2 parts of town where a community survey had indicated we just weren't performing as high as the rest of the city. Fun fact, that's actually my own house. That photo is staged. It was for a magazine. That's one of my coworkers answering my own door. But we did some outreach with some communities of color, including the Latino and Karen communities. Certainly has some relevance here as we try to build relationships with the communities of color in Beloit. And then made the rounds of the coffee classes, senior homes, nonprofits. Done the same thing in Beloit during the about 2 years that I've been here, and then we also expanded our other communications. I like to have fun too, so this is kind of a walk down memory lane. We created a Facebook series of a guy trying to get into the pool in the middle of winter. It was colder in Albert Lea that day than it was in Antarctica. So we just sort of built with that, and I thought it was fun to include this slide again because the guy on the left just debated J.D. Vance at the vice presidential debate last night. That's me being an idiot with the in character, but I got other people to go along with it too. So Minnesota was big on the census as we were in peril of losing a congressional seat. So the idea was that we'd go in the right corner there, we would go literally around town counting people one by one, and then I got our mayor to wear a census nerd t-shirt during a council meeting. And then we used the character to advocate for things that we needed sort of more public awareness about. But anytime we inserted the character, more people would click like on it and whatnot. I haven't had time to do anything fun in my role here, but one day I might get back to that. And then we used sort of creative messaging, so to get people to drive slower, we recreated the Abbey Road record cover, and then took some photos around town to just sort of increase community pride. And I've done that a little bit in Beloit. I don't get out as much as I want to, but I've been able to sort of bike ride through town and take pictures. So one of the questions that I get in this role, or I've gotten during the first year or so that I've been here, has been, how are you settling in? And this is a fun story to tell now about my time in Westland, but really was, nightmare might be too strong a word, but it is maybe applicable. And some of you have heard this before because it is a fun story to tell right now, but I started in September of 2020. We had wildfires on my first day. The air quality index was over 500 during that first week I was there. In October, I had counselors file a harassment claim against another counselor, then take the video of that harassment, it occurred during a Zoom meeting, and put that on our website. In November, our computers went down while everybody was working from home, so we weren't able to work. In December, I terminated the police chief. In January, I had council members refuse to leave office, and I was looking at these slides again. The word disgraceful is actually from an editorial that our local paper wrote about the last meeting that our council had. And then in February, I had a once in 40-year ice storm that left the city without power for a week. So when people ask, like, how's it going in Beloit? Every day is like a birthday party, right? So the thing that I remember that isn't on this slide is I also received a petition from a group of residents in town that asked me to discipline or fire a police officer. I chose not to. We did an investigation of the investigation, and it was determined that this officer was not put in a position to fail, and I decided not to take a disciplinary action. The reason that I mention it now is because everything that was happening with our police department was tracked by the Oregonian, the state's largest paper. So I went through a lot in a very, very short amount of time, and then I landed in Beloit, but this is what 34,000 cubic yards of tree debris look like. That's a piece of construction debris, or rather equipment in the corner, just to give you some perspective. This was the one time I abused my authority, and that is to say, like, nobody was allowed to climb this, but I thought it'd be fun to memorialize the occasion and take the photo from standing upon, I don't know how, about 34,000 cubic yards of tree debris. We also reformed the way that our police department worked, and the reason I bring this up now is you'll notice a few things that are about transparency and citizen involvement. So a citizen-led task force provided a set of recommendations for how our department should be operating. We also did something that in Oregon was innovative, which was item number 6, creation of review and recommend group. So the way that our police department was handling complaints about its officers wasn't done very transparently. So we brought in citizens to that. We were the first department in Oregon to do something like that. Here, it feels like the PFC would be similar to that, but Oregon was not that far ahead. But we were behind. We also had residents serving on hiring panels, which is actually a pretty cool idea. So then I did a whole bunch of things related to sustainability and resilience, which I won't list, but it is sort of a running theme in my work. I think it's really important to leave things better than we found them, and with climate change being what it is, we really need to take this seriously. So I want to get to Beloit. Here we go. I was asked, or what you saw on the flyers was something about the city's strategic plan. So these are the 6 items that are dropped into the plan. I won't read them all off, but I might mention a few things that we've done during my tenure here that fit in with the strategic plan. If you haven't seen the plan, it's pretty big, and I would argue should remain our plan for the next few years. There's a lot of big things in it that will take a very long time to accomplish. And I've said to council members, the strategic plan will outlast me, will probably outlast them. They are big goals that the city of Beloit set some time ago, and I think that we need to work toward fulfilling. So I'm going to grab some water real fast. I feel like Marco Rubio. All right, there we go. Okay. So I want to comment a little bit about these goals here. So safe and healthy neighborhoods. When you look at our strategic plan, this relates mostly to crime and policing. I would say that we're all aware that crime does happen in the city, but most of the violent crime, to be really blunt, is about availability of guns and offenders either being called out on social media or nasty things being said about them on social media, which is crazy to think about, but that's just a fact. Our police department does a tremendous job at community relations, as well as building relationships with people in the community so that when things do happen, they have people who tell them what's going on. our clearance rate for the violent crime, specifically homicide that has happened this year, I think it's 100%. So while crime does happen, we do find the people who perpetrate it, which I think is a really important point that I want to emphasize. You know, since I've been here, I will hear things that like, oh, Beloit has a lot of crime, and the numbers just don't justify this. I think it's a remnant from a previous time. I would say being from Chicago, we have very little crime. And the number one complaint that I get about crime, well, actually, what do you think the number one complaint about crime that I get is? What do you think is the thing that galvanizes the most calls to my office about crime? Oh, come on.
Immigrants do it.
No. Speeding. Speeding is the thing that people call me the most about. And I will take that. And as a community, I think that's a really good space to be. I will tell you too, as our chief sales reminds me all the time, and the data shows, we make more car stops than we ever have. We're continuing to make more car stops. That does not mean that we're necessarily issuing more citations. We try to let people off with a warning. But I can tell you that as a bike rider or as just somebody who does obey the speed limit, I do get passed a fair amount on Milwaukee Road and other parts. Right? Hey, I know we got some work to do. I'm not saying this is puppy dogs and ice cream, but we've got some work to do. Moving along to a high-performing organization. So last year was the first year that we got an increase in revenue from the state. So we used that funding to do a few things. One, we pay our staff more money. So everybody got a 5% pay bump this past year, and we also added positions to our organization in places that we hadn't been able to. Oh, there it goes. Well, anyway, it'll come back. Or sorry, Amy. But we added positions to our organization in places that we hadn't in a very long time. We're pretty lean staffed, and we make do with what we have, but we were able to add positions specifically in IT, where we had 4 people serving an organization of about 350 people, plus the public. We added positions in public works, where previously our public works director was, while he didn't have 100 direct reports, he managed a department of 100 people without a number 2. That department was just too big to have without more management. Other things that we've done in terms of a high-performing organization, we're a member of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. I think it's important that we steal best practices or read best practices from other cities to stay a little bit more knowledgeable about what we can do in Beloit. And we have partnered to the extent possible with the surrounding jurisdictions. And I mean this more specifically as it relates to cities. So I know the relationship, the City of Beloit's relationships with the town of Turtle hasn't been the best. I've had beer with Roger and Chris at the Turtle Tap. Tried to build that relationship. We get along pretty well with the town, and we get along pretty well with South Beloit as well. Also tried to get along with our sister units of government in the city. So hi, Dr. Garrison and Bob Shady, good to see you. Glad you're here. And the other thing in terms of being a high-performing organization that I wanted to highlight is more of our staff now, and I can be fact-checked on this, but I don't know where you'd find the fact to prove this, but I would argue that more of our staff now than ever has been trained in NIMS or emergency management training. And as we go through all of these emergencies, or we see what's happening in the Carolinas, that doesn't mean that things are going to be perfect when a big storm hits here, but we'll be a little bit better trained and able to deal with those things. We did have a tabletop exercise planned for this past week, but had to cancel it. And the other thing I want to highlight on being a high-performing organization that ties into some other things here is within the city manager's office, we have an emergency manager. I've asked her to sort of take on some additional duties. So not in addition to emergency management, she also does sustainability and resilience. I view these things as sort of being one and the same. So we have a climate action plan that's been released. We're waiting to get back. Or let me rephrase, we released an RFP, or request for proposals for our climate action plan. That's currently out there right now. Once we get that done, we'll have a climate action plan. I'm not aware that we have, well, we don't have one, and that's a critical step toward carbon neutrality. Economic and residential growth. I think in the spring, and I see Laura's head nodding, Drew is presenting at this. So for those who don't know, Drew Pennington is our Economic Development Director. He also leads the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation. He's done some really great things. You can hear about them in the spring, but I'll highlight a few now. So first, he does retention visits. You know, city's growth can always come through new businesses coming to town, but more than likely it'll be through businesses expanding in town. He's also partnered with the schools to create, to ensure that we have a workforce for our employers in town. And one of the things that I would say comes up every day in my role as city manager is housing. So we have about $12 million that we've been able to allocate toward housing in the city. Doing a whole bunch of things with that, including investing in our downtown to create more units of housing in the upper floors. Council has awarded funding to 2 developments, one at the Old Y, as it's known in town. I think that's 55 units. They've also awarded funding toward a development near G5 at 3500 Eagles Ridge. That's going through land use right now, but that would be 99 units. Other things that we've done is allocate funding for creation of new subdivisions, and I think the next thing that we're working on is funding for, I'm like thinking about my email in my head right now, funding for, I mentioned subdivisions, so that's that. Moving forward with high quality of life, you might have seen some new playgrounds come into town. I know there's one at Horace White Park because I just rode by it this morning. I saw Tom Warren doing cartwheels as he was making his way through the park, so good to see you here, Tom. And we've also added some parks in some other places in town. I'll tell you flatly that parks is something I want to be working a lot on over the next year. If you go to some of our other parks, we need to do a better job. Now I'm hyper aware that this is being recorded, so I don't want our friends in Public Works to get mad at me. But if you go to the Brook Street Park, there's no playground equipment. We got to be better there. If you go to other parks in town, the way that we use the full space of the park can be better. Hey, Carl, Park and Rec Committee. The use of Christella Park is one that comes to mind, right? So it's a giant park. We just did the playground in there, but we have a huge field, and I view that as quite an opportunity. We probably need some more funding to move the ball along a little bit further there, but you know, parks is probably one of the few places, I shouldn't say few places, the parks and the libraries are where most residents will interact with us, right? I mean, when you drive on a road, you'll hear that, and you can curse my name for all the construction going on in town right now, but Park and Rec and the library are really sort of the front door of the city, if you will. So Nick and Amy and other staff do a great job at the library, and I'm really excited about Discovery Place, and that can be maybe another day. The other things with high quality of life have to do with, and I was just sort of looking at our strategic plan before I came up here, but have to do with our tree canopy. We need to do a better job on trees. We just don't have the funding for it. We did apply for a $500,000 grant from the federal government that was going through the DNR. Regrettably, we didn't get it, but we are behind on tree trimming, and we need to do more tree planting. Reality is we just don't have the funding for that, but we'll keep applying for those grants when they become available. And the other thing in quality of life that I wanted to bring up is a sub-goal of this is getting people to think about other modes of transportation. So when I walked past the staffer at the library, I did say my bike is a prop for this, but I have two sort of, I should know if they're pipe dream goals, but two big abstract goals as city manager. One is the Sky Carb sellout every game, and two, that 100 people use their bike to commute or get around during the summer. Rick Barter will remind me that I haven't done enough on that, and he never misses a chance to let me know that. But we keep investing in infrastructure as it relates to biking. I swear to you this is coincidentally, but all the ways to make my bike commute easier from my house to work have been improved this past year. Okay, It is coincidental. Lee Lane just got redone. Henry just got fixed, and Henry was a mess. So we're making progress along those lines. And the other thing that I'd love to accomplish more on, as it relates to sort of alternative modes of transportation besides your car, is getting more people on our bus system. I see heads nodding, but I mean, one of the best place I can get data on this right now is from the American Community Survey that says 129 people use buses to get to work. In a city of 37,000, I would love to do better, but there's things that we need to do to improve the bus system. So, one, be able to tap your credit card and get on the bus, and that should happen December 1st, I got told. I've been pressing them about that. And then if we could ever increase the frequency with which the bus comes, I know that would be attractive to a lot of people. We also just need to do a better job at the system we have. So I was in Janesville attempting to get back to Beloit, and I was trying to take the Beloit-Janesville Express bus because I went to Janesville to get my car fixed. And the bus that I needed to take came too early, and then the map that we had to point out where the stops were wasn't accurate. And I spoke to Terry Dowding, our Deputy Community Development Director, about that, and she said, it's funny that you should mention that. I'm applying for a grant to analyze the BJ8 of Beloit-Janesville Express over the next year, and hopefully we get that funding. Having a better operating transit system is something that I think would be an asset to the city. Moving forward with high quality infrastructure and connectivity. So we've upgraded some of our vehicles with the additional funding that we got from the state. In addition to providing more funding, we just want people to have things that work at their job. And seeing some of the state of our maintenance fleet was not very good. So we want people to have nice things when they come to work. And connectivity, we allocated ARPA dollars for more fiber to town to connect the city a little bit better. And then the communications and community engagement. So during the time I've been here, we've done these satellite offices, and I try to get out to as many places as possible and be as accessible as possible. It's funny, I was scrolling through Facebook one day, and I saw a comment about how people like the fact that they see me on the bike going to and from work. And I was like, all right, well, I'm glad that's working. So here's where I want to spend the bulk of time, if we could. And I'm going to have some water, and then we can talk about these things. Thanks. So in a couple of weeks, our council's going to have a budget workshop. And I've said to them it'd be great if we could retain the strategic plan that we have because it's so big and because it will take us years to cross off a lot of the items from the plan. But there are some things that I've been sort of thinking about during the year and a half that I've been here that I want to share with you, maybe get your feedback on, as well as discuss with and I discussed these with council, but the opportunities and challenges that the city has. So I highlighted strong neighborhoods and then sort of four different things here that I want to talk about. But being from Chicago, one of the things that Mayor Emanuel got criticized for was that the downtown was always doing well, but the neighborhoods weren't. That was the criticism of ROM. And I kind of dispute that as a former Chicagoan, but I can see how somebody might say the same thing about Beloit. And in fact, they have when folks are cutting my hair, that they want to see the neighborhoods being vibrant too. And so we're doing a few things toward that end. So first, I've attempted to create neighborhood associations. So getting people to know each other, sort of take control of their block, get to know us as city staff and know about what we can provide to help their neighborhoods get better. I've had a few people be interested in this, and I've canvassed with them. One of the fun stories from the canvass, because I think I have an hour and 15 minutes to fill, Laura. But this is a great story from the canvass. So knocking on doors in the area around Vernon Park, and somebody opens their doors, gives us her contact information, wants to join the neighborhood association. And she says, does the city have any jobs? And I said, yeah, we're always hiring. So, check our webpage. And I said, one thing I know we need is we're way behind on on park maintenance, and we don't have enough seasonals. And she said, well, I'm gonna apply and use you as a reference. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna be honest with the HR staff and just say that I've known you for 15 minutes, so, and she said, and I said, and besides, I don't really know how well you mow a lawn anyway. And she said, well, you're standing on it, how does it look? She works for the city now. It wasn't because I got her the job, but you know, it's that sort of an organic interactions that happen that I think lead to more cohesiveness in the community, and it leads to us getting more seasonals. Not so fun fact about seasonal employees and park maintenance. One, we don't pay them enough, and we're going to, but we still can't compete with other places they can find jobs. And we budgeted this past year for, I think, 13 or 14 seasonal maintenance workers, and we only got about half. And what I see heads nodding. I mean, you probably saw that in our parks over the past year. We don't have enough people to do the work. We've even allocated funding for it, but we can't find people. And then, so commercial corridors is, you know, another thing I want to highlight is sort of way that I think the city can grow and move forward is vibrant commercial corridors. So what comes to mind is Prairie. I used to live at Prairie in Murphy Woods when we moved here. I think it could use more investment. And Madison on the west side. So we are exploring the creation of a TIF along those corridors. Does everybody know what a TIF is? Okay, but for those who don't, it's basically an area of the city that the funding stays in, if you were to draw parameters. So the additional tax revenue that's generated in that area stays in that area. Oh, this is even better because I can see it over there. Okay, and then we have code enforcement, and I'm a little bit surprised by this, but it is something that other than speeding complaints, hits my desk with some frequency. I see heads nodding. Okay, good. I've been surprised by the amount of calls that I get about code enforcement, and it's not that we're not doing it, it's that we're not getting as many results as I'd like. So if we're going to create strong neighborhoods, I think it's important that we address some of the code enforcement issues that we see in town. There's some long-standing buildings, maybe in your neighborhoods, but certainly in neighborhoods that I've canvassed, that I think we can get in touch with owners and get them to either sell the house or find out what's happening with the house or repair the house. We've had some success with that. You know, and I told our code enforcement staff this, when I think back to my Chicago days, I spent a lot of time working on problem buildings. We had, once a building became vacant, it became a place where gangs gangs moved in or drugs were sold. And those sort of things, if you want to create strong neighborhoods, need to be addressed. And the other thing that we need to do is outreach to the Latino community. I was at an event for Hispanic Heritage Month at the beginning of September, and I saw two people out of a crowd of thousands that I knew. One was the organizer, and the other person was Deb Fisher, who's white. And 20% of our city is Latino, and we need to do better at bringing those voices into the conversation. I've tried, and I need to do more. So we've established and built a relationship with La Voz de Beloit, Maria Elena White, who's hyper involved in our community. We've also built a relationship with La Preferida de Beloit. I know Nick has too, because we were at some of their events this past year. But those are things that I think can help us create those strong neighborhoods. And then smart growth. And so a couple things on smart growth. We just redid our comp plan this past year. I think some of you participated in those discussions. And what I'd like to do over this upcoming year is rewrite our zoning code to match what's in the new comp plan. I can't remember if our zoning code was written in 2001 or 1999, but I think the world's changed in the last 23 years, so we need a zoning code that fits it a little bit better. The zoning code would allow for hopefully more flexibility on housing, more mixed use, better neighborhoods, more housing, things of that nature. And then a rewrite of the sign code. Strangest thing is, like, I hear about the sign code all the time. One of the strangest definitions that was in our sign code is it defined, or maybe it still does, anything that conveys meaning as a sign. Okay? What doesn't convey meaning? And I sat there and the only thing I could think of was a doorknob. But, I mean, these things need to get better. So we'll rewrite those hopefully over the next year. Smart growth related to the casino. The casino will happen, I promise. But one of the questions that I've been thinking about is how do you leverage an investment of potentially $500 million literally at the edge of your town and connect it with the rest of your city? How do you leverage all the people who all those visits to the city and the fact that the city owns a fair amount of land between the city, or let me rephrase, the core of the city and the casino. So I want to, when this is all over and someone else is standing here, be able for that person to say the growth that the casino galvanized, or the planning that was done around the casino was smart. I referenced Larry Arft earlier, and one of my other lunches with him, he said, you know, my predecessors didn't do any favors putting a wastewater treatment plant near the expressway. And I just want, when this is over, the crowd that is in this room 20 years from now to look back and go, actually, when the casino came to town, they were smart about how they grew from there. Facility needs. So this is a big one. Have any of you, this is kind of, I'll use this anecdote to tie in the facility needs question. Did any of you see the comments on Facebook about the bricks at the cemetery? Okay, you're laughing. I mean, this was how I spent a fair amount of last week. So we made a decision to remove some of the bricks in the cemetery and repave that area with asphalt instead of bricks. Asphalt's about $10,000, the bricks are about $200,000. I'm very aware that we'll probably have to asphalt a few times, but the cost will never really hit that $200,000 threshold. And I went down to talk to our staff member who handles historic preservation for the city. She does a great job, Hillary Robin. And she said, you know, the bricks are not, there's nothing in the city's records that show that these bricks are historic per se, but Jerry, you need to be aware of one thing. We've knocked down a couple of historic items in the city, and we're using deferred maintenance as an excuse, but it really isn't an excuse. And I was like, oh, wow, that explains some of the other things going on in the city. And here's what I mean. We've deferred maintenance on a fair amount of our infrastructure for a long time, and it's not because we were willing to do that, it was because we didn't have funding. And so let me give you the list. The police station is too small by 4. So we have a space needs study that's still in draft form, but I think it's being presented to council either Monday or later in October. We're already in October, but later in October. It's about 12,000 square feet, and the initial prescription, I think, or recommendation is that we need about 48,000 square feet. It could be even larger. I don't have a site in mind for where it would go, but we had the space needs study just sort of done to start having this discussion. Have any of you been in the police station? And I don't mean because you committed a crime, but okay. Yeah, I see some hands being raised. So I'm by no means an engineer, but we have dehumidifiers or humidifiers running. We have fans running, and you need to turn to let somebody pass you in the hallway. It's too small. That doesn't mean that I have the funding ready for building a new one, but it is something that we need to be aware of as a community. The other facility need that I'll comment about is our hockey arena. We're having a study done on the hockey arena to determine, what feasibility of keeping it, how much demand there is for hockey, but it doesn't have walls. If we're going to keep hockey, we need to start thinking about that. Grinnell Hall is another place where we have about $500,000 that I can think of in repairs that need to get made. And I did a tour of the pool earlier this year, and our maintenance staff started showing me everything that was wrong with it. And I was like, well, I just learned what a Phillips screwdriver was a few weeks ago, so let's go slow. all right, I heard one laugh, thanks. But $7 million estimate from years ago for repairs that are needed at the pool. I'm forgetting one. The roads in town, I know I'm getting complaints about construction, but I'll take them because we're getting the roads fixed. But there was an article in the paper not that long ago that said that Beloit has the second worst roads in the city, or state rather. But we have all of these needs coming forward, and I think it's critical that we start talking about this as a community, that we've got some things that we need to start funding. I don't have specific recommendations about what those will be right now, but I wanted to sort of put that on the radar of people who are influencers, and everybody here is, like, I know there are other folks in town that look to you for guidance about what's going on in the city, and I think one of the things I wanted to convey here is that I wanted you to start thinking about these things, because those bills are coming due, if you will. The Hillary Rotman line of deferred maintenance is coming up. I think that's all I have, right? Okay, I see Nick nodding.
Slide-wise.
Yeah, good. So, I know I gave you a lot, I know I talk fast, but this is where I wanted to spend the meat of the discussion, if you will, and I may not have answers to all the questions that you asked because I'm still learning about some of our facilities needs and some of the other stuff, but happy to take questions. I find this is more fun if it's more of a Q&A. I know I've done a lot of talking, so Laura, I saw your hand go up.
Well, does anyone else want to start? No, I was just curious. You mentioned on the previous slide around high-performing organization goals that you were able to give your staff a 5% increase. So
Yeah.
That's great, especially considering that inflation
Went higher than that?
in
Yeah.
the recent, not so recent past. But how is it that your budget did increase this past year? Was that?
Can you repeat the question? Yeah.
Yeah, so how did you receive a budget increase? Was that because of growth in the city?
No.
Was that because of?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the question was how we were able to get additional revenue.
Yes.
Okay, and the answer for that is the state increased the amount of revenue provided to the cities. Not just in Beloit, but in cities throughout the state. And the other ways in which cities can raise, well, let me go back. The way in which cities can raise its taxes is through net new construction, which I'll save comments on, but for us in particular, and you've heard this probably since you became Beloiters, we can't grow to the south, and growing to the west is difficult because of the land and how difficult it is to dig there. So we're constrained there, which is why the relationships that we have with our other municipalities is really important. But I mean, even in the shared revenue, it's never enough. We'll take it, but it's never enough, right? Other questions? Yes.
I got a few. I'm fairly simple about this, so
Okay.
So they may sound as like simple questions.
All right.
Hope they are. From the last comment, you said that you received more state income. How much more?
About $3 million.
And how much of that $3 million went to cover the 5% increases in pay?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, I just hear that there's a number of deferred maintenance issues.
Yeah.
There's a number of trees that ought to be trimmed. There ought to be more care of parks. So there's a lot of places that need money.
Right.
Did any of those places get increases as well?
So we were able to do a few things, address some of the longer term needs within the city. But the items that I rattled off are quite expensive. So the cost of redoing our roads and getting them at a level that they should be is about $200 million. The cost of the pool, I think I mentioned, was $7 million. The cost of a new police station will probably be tens of millions of dollars. So those are bigger items that we can't get through that little bit of revenue. I don't mean to say a little bit of revenue, but a little bit of revenue. We were able to do some things, address some of the needs that we sort of could with that additional funding, in addition to just giving our staff an increase at a time when inflation is through the roof. We were able to buy a new fire truck, the first time in 25 years that we added a fire truck of its size. Through ARPA funding, we were able to add new playgrounds. We also just added new positions too. So it was the pay increase, but also some additions of positions. And I mentioned some of the fleet that we were able to replace because we deferred maintenance on our fleet for so long that some of those cars were falling into disrepair.
Can I ask a few more questions?
Always.
Second one, your mention of the casino. When's the drop dead date on any construction happening?
There's not a drop dead date, but I would imagine that construction will happen soon.
Soon?
Yeah.
How would one define soon? That's just political speak for, they
Yeah.
say they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's far enough, you don't have an answer
Yeah,
that's gonna satisfy me
that's fine.
or the question itself.
Sure, but I can tell you that our technical staffs are talking on a daily basis.
That's great.
Will it be in 2024?
I would imagine yes.
Third question.
Yeah.
You had mentioned your experience of getting your car repaired up in Janesville, about wanting to take transportation,
Yeah.
public transportation back here.
Yeah.
And we're told that they were applying for funding to do a study.
Yeah.
Why do you need funding to hold an entity like the bus system to account for poor maps
Yeah.
and reviewing their timing
Sure.
on bus schedules?
Yeah.
Why do you need funding for that? Aren't we paying people to be responsible for that?
Yeah. So the reason that we'd like to have it studied is the last time that route was examined was 25 years ago. I would argue that just the way of doing life in Beloit and Janesville has changed since then. I think that we could think more critically about how we're able to staff that bus in particular, and then I would add, we should probably be thinking about what times we have those buses running. We're short-staffed in places, so the cost of the study would probably be about $25,000. It would be a grant.
Who would we be funding to do that thoughtful work? Because apparently we don't have them as hired persons currently.
It would be a consultant.
Okay. And then my last question,
All right.
probably the easiest one,
Sure.
was you had shown a list of things that you had done in another community. And the last one that you, was number 7 on it.
Okay.
That said that you had hired, I believe, a counselor instead of a police officer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Behavioral health specialist.
Yeah, were you charged with defunding the police when you made that move?
No. No.
Because some of the talk I hear about defunding the
Yeah.
police wants to take those situations and tell you that you just defunded the police because you could have had another police officer.
Yeah, we couldn't have another
Instead of
police
that
officer.
person.
Yeah, we couldn't have another police officer. The reality was, in that situation, police officers were tired of responding to calls in which a behavioral health specialist could have handled those calls better. And to emphasize this point, that position was split between the city of West Lynn and the city of Lake Oswego. When I went back into Lake Oswego, I had worked there after I left West Lynn as city manager. And so I was in the police station in Lake Oswego, and some cop comes up to me, he's like, "Were you the city manager in West Lynn?" And I was like, "Oh boy, here we go," right? Because I just want to thank you for hiring that officer, for that behavioral health specialist, because they have been able to diffuse situations related to substance abuse and domestic violence. And those are the types of calls that take up so much officer time and keeps that officer in that situation instead of being back on the street. So it's a model that other cities have done. In fact, in Beloit, we worked toward that too, but it wasn't at the expense of other officers in the department.
Lest you take my comments as too aggressive.
It's the first time that's happened.
I just want to say I appreciate the work that you do and the energy and effort that you
Yeah.
provide for our community. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm gonna come back to the question about about the transit study though, because it's a valid one. Our deputy community development director has transit, code enforcement, as well as the rest of the community development department, right? So transit's a big entity. Code enforcement, I've sort of highlighted the things that have come up over the time that I've been here. We don't have staff to spend time working on a study. I wish we did, but a study like that takes a fair amount of time and would pull that person or persons away from their regular scheduled duties. I mentioned earlier that we run pretty lean, and I wish we had more people to do the work that needs to get done. I regret sometimes that we're just doing the day-to-day and not looking at the big picture. What I try to emphasize to our department heads is, I want you thinking 5-10 years in advance. I mentioned some of the things here where I want, smart growth and to us to make let me rephrase, decisions with the long view in mind. And we don't have capacity to do those things. And by the way, 25 years is too long to let a bus route run without looking at it again. So, but I appreciate the questions. It's funny that the point that you made at the end, like, every now and then people go, yeah, I'm sorry I asked such tough questions. Well, I wouldn't do this if I didn't anticipate them coming. And I think that the community is better when we're actually having these discussions and asking those tough questions versus just saying, thanks for coming and whatever else. But yeah, Jeff. Speaking of tough questions.
Beloit has the distinction of being the most heavily aided city in the state of Wisconsin. One of the reasons is because we have the lowest or second lowest equalized value for residential property in the state of Wisconsin. Strikes me that is a burden. And so in your strategic plan, what kind of speaks to ways in which residential values might be increased and enhanced through revaluation or new construction?
So the question was,
How do we begin to try to get out of the basement with regard to low value residential?
So we're in the midst of a reevaluation now, and then I believe I might grab this for Eric for next session. Wait. Yeah. So for those who don't know, Eric Miller's our finance director, and he has featured 2 of these sessions in a row.
And Lori Moldova.
And as well as our assessor, she will be at that one. I think that'll be a good discussion for them to answer. I'm not going to be shy about that because I will say this: I had to watch Eric's Know Your Local Government to learn about how property taxes are done in Wisconsin, and moreover, Bob Chady, hi. The way in which schools are funded is even more complex than the city's funding, and why the state chooses to be so opaque about things that should be as transparent and as easy to digest is something that I don't understand, and I've done this work in 4 states now. So, but I'll let Eric take that next time he's here.
But housing is one of your policy objectives.
Yeah. So, are you asking about how we can leverage more housing to increase the values of the city? Yeah.
Is that an objective?
Well, we need to be smart about it, and yes, it is. Getting those values to increase is something that is top of mind for me, and I would say yeah. Yes?
I have a comment and then a question. I know that everyone isn't involved with social media, but the City of Beloit page and the fire department page and the police department page was very informational, and I think Sarah Locke and the crew she works with do a wonderful job. But if you read those pages, they're very sad and depressing because all the naysayers are there. The room looks like there's room for more people today.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've been very proud and pleased to participate in city committees, commissions, and all that for over 40 years. We always have openings. We always mention them. But I just, how do we get more of our, well, all citizens, not just the unhappy ones involved? Because every committee I'm on, I learn more about the city, and right now I'm on the plan commission, and that's a trip.
Yeah.
So how do we approach that? Because, you know, I know you have openings and things, but all of our citizens should participate in them, and then they would better understand the workings of our government.
Yeah. So the question was about how to fill more vacancies within boards and commissions. Is that accurate? Okay. It's difficult to do because typically it's a negative externality that drives people to get involved with their local government, right? It's a crime issue, it's a land use issue, it's something that they don't want or they don't like that usually generates that involvement. I haven't found the magic bullet because the other part of joining a board or commission is you have to do it every month, and sometimes the agenda for those things is not the most interesting thing either. So getting that sustained level of involvement is difficult. I tell people too that you don't necessarily have to join a board or commission to participate in your local government because you can still send us an email. We're going to respond. You can call us. We're going to pick up. We're going to attempt to address the concern that you have and you know meet your need, if you will.
Well, with my experience on some of the committees,
Yeah.
when people come before the committee, they don't understand that oftentimes their complaint isn't the role of, and just like the city councilor. So, I mean, I'd like to see every city councilor be an election official in a year that they're not up for election, so that they can better explain to the community how things work. And I found every commission I've been on, I've learned more. And I'm unlike the negative people. I just like to learn. I was on the PFC for a while and went through some very turbulent times, but I learned a lot, and I think the commission as a whole, it was very dysfunctional when I first joined, and I was just like, whoa. So if you just break down, so I mean, more people should experience, then they would really know, you know, just like all the new housing and things.
Yeah.
What they're asking isn't necessarily the right question.
Yeah, and I would think too that some of the boards and commissions in any city are more attractive than others. So Park and Rec is always going to be a commission within the city that people are going to be interested in. Other things, sometimes about land use, so thank you for serving, people aren't as interested in. And it's something that I think every city suffers with, because every city has vacancies. I haven't found the right answer for how to fill all of them. Yes?
I'm wondering if in your strategic plan for the opportunities and challenges has the neighborhood associations, whether having neighborhood associations more like wards would possibly have interested people in that ward be able to talk to the less interested people to explain what those things are. I mean, I've run into people, you know, because election time and they're walking the streets and everything. Well, some of this stuff they're carrying around is so out of date, so not, you know, the way it is, where you could just ask anybody across the street, they kind of know basically how people lean, you know, the husband's one way, the wife's the other, or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, people really know their neighborhoods, and having a neighborhood group gets to help you know your neighbors better. I really find a lot of value in the watch the neighborhood. That I think when those get organized, at least in our neighborhood, it's a great time to meet all of our neighbors, and I think possibly we are going to actually make our
Sure. So the question was about organizing neighborhood associations and a mention of wards. So I'll grab that a little bit. Wards are usually political boundaries in cities, which would probably require a charter amendment, and then each councilor to be elected from that specific ward. That's really hard to do. But where Dr. Garrison and I might work together is schools and parks are natural rallying points for communities too. So there might be more that we could do around those entities to sort of build a neighborhood association. Where we've had luck in Vernon Park, because when we've canvassed around there, the first question that I get asked is what's going on with the park.
Yeah.
And there might be opportunity for things like a Friends of the Parks to build, and then people could allocate funding toward their local park in addition to what the city provides. I've done that in other places, it works really well. Nick's sort of leering over me, so I guess that means I'm done. Thanks, Nick. I'll hang out afterward, so thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks to Jerry again, and like he said, he'll stay after and have one-on-one or group conversations, whatever it is. He also mentioned Eric coming, and so it's really nice. We wanted him to set the table, Jerry at a high level, and then Eric's going to dig down into the finances and the different areas there. It was also mentioned Bob Chady, who's joining us in the back, and Dr. Garrison. A couple programs related to the school district. Certainly one is in the second half of this, after the first of the year. Bob Chady will be doing district finances, education finances. He's done that in the past, and we'll do that again. And then also in December, that is on your poster there, we're working with the school districts collaboratively on a project to kind of make sense of all that data that's delivered to DPI, Department of Public Instruction, that every school district delivers to the state. And so working on a data tool to kind of make sense of that for just the person out there in the community that wants to click and go, what is this? What's that? What's the number on that? So all part of the transparency. Thanks for your transparency and candor. And we'll see you at the next session. Thanks.